Welcome to Cut Daisies and Unicorns. This is a Phil and Steve edition, and we have been off for a little while, Steve.
We've been off for a long time.
Right. I mean, I feel like
not a
this
little
is,
while.
Yeah,
we're always off.
Yeah, that's another subject altogether, being
Yeah.
off. But yeah, I mean, we did the live one, and I feel like, that wasn't too long ago. How long ago was that?
It was 2 Sundays ago.
Yeah. So,
And this is Thursday.
right.
So if we want to time travel back into a different era, I would say that, it's, I don't know, been about 10 days, not quite 14.
And so if you don't know, we are also in the new studio. And so we've got this whole setup here. And before, I used to be, my background was black. And now everything's white and we've got different colors bringing in. And it's just it's a good setup. And I think it's gonna serve us well in this spot.
Yeah, I think so. If for no other reason, we feel less scrunched.
Right.
You don't feel scrunched, do you?
I don't feel scrunched.
Yeah, I don't feel scrunched either.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll have to work out our
Placement.
and stuff like that.
Right.
Because right now, I don't feel like I can really connect the camera 2 very well. Sorry, camera 2.
Right,
But-
which will be our main camera, so you'd want to definitely connect with the main camera.
Get involved in a little hoochie scoochie. I just gotta
Hoochie scoochie.
be able to move back. Yeah, we did some equipment upgrades.
We did.
So we got our personal shot lenses are all unified now, 50 millimeter by Nikkor. Thank you, Nikon. Production
Right.
in China and Japan.
Okay.
Yeah, and
That's where they hail from.
yep, we added a monitor splitter, so now we got John working off of a larger monitor, and we can still see our monitor, and we don't have to use the camera monitor from the big camera.
Right.
Got our lights in Unity. We're running about the same color light, so we're not multiple lights. We are borrowing the LEDs to throw backlight up.
Right.
And so we've not been backlit before. If you're like, man, this video looks awesome. It seems like you guys are almost like 3D. Well,
I think I am.
let me check my dimension. How dimensional do I feel? Yes, 3D.
3D.
We're live and 3D.
Yeah, so what I want to go back to is, that live show. Really good first opportunity it was for us to be able to be in front of some people live, and not in person, but it was live stream. We were able to reach out to some of the people who are listening. And as we talked about a little bit earlier, we talked about building a foundation, because that's what we're doing. And there was some community building there. People who didn't know each other, or maybe they did, and they were connecting in different ways.
Yeah.
So that was the goal, and I think that was it started well.
Yeah, I think so. And certainly the people who are listening and getting started to listen, they showed up. We polled them. What time works out?
Right.
They showed up. We had a great time.
We did.
We'll do it again. We're not going to do it every week.
Right.
I mean, we do make it look easy, just showing up and just, talking all the time. Right. And so then, people are like, man, why can't we have this 24/7? I'm like, well, because I need to sleep for 10 hours. That's why.
10 hours.
Well, I mean, if I'd have my druthers, I slept 6 hours last night, but I mean, it's just.
Yeah, 6 hours I think is too short.
Maybe I slept for 8. I don't know.
I would I think 7 or 8 is usually where the recommended, isn't it? 7.
Yeah, but
7 and
they
8?
recommend that you should exercise,
that's
and I don't do that either. So I mean,
yeah.
I saw the doctor yesterday, and it was really, really interesting. Doctor wants to perform a colonoscopy.
Yeah.
I don't think he personally is going to do the colonoscopy.
He farms that off to somebody else?
Yeah. Talk about a shit show. Like, oh my gosh. So he's asking me about my history. This is the first time I've been to the doctor since I moved to Chicago, and the first time I've been to the doctor in 18 months because of the pandemic. Like, I was supposed to get my annual or semi-annual as the pandemic started. So I was already 6 months, and then it's been another 14. Oh my gosh. And then this guy, he's like Mr. Computer Wizard, and he's thinking about, well, hey, we live in the current day and age. I should be able to like just type in and be able to pull up all of your stuff. And I was thinking, I think I would have asked me to contact the doctor and have my records shipped, or emailed or whatever.
Seems about right.
Nope, not that guy. And so he's like, well, let's go over this. I'm like, I don't want to have to remember what year I had my first kidney stone attack. Like, I have displaced that.
Right.
When people people want, well, when did that happen? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, like, I had a friend die 3 years ago, and it feels like it's been 7 years. I mean, like, time just really, really messes with my head. So anyway, I'm like, Mr. Doctor, doctor, give me the news. This guy, though,
Yeah.
he was something.
That's good. But he's the one also saying, hey, it's time for a colonoscopy.
Well, when he heard that I had done the Cologuard thing,
right.
and then he kind of like, he had his mask on, so I couldn't see like him grimace, his facial contortions that happen. He's like, well, that's not really a colonoscopy. And I'm like, well, no, but that's why I chose to do it. He's like, what do you have against colonoscopies? I'm like, I think there's everything that I need to have. I'm like,
there's a lot that you can be against.
We're going to have to rate this one like rated R. Everybody who's a human who's, at least over the age of 30 will probably appreciate this conversation. But I mean, I had kidney stones. My first kidney stone episode, they tried to shock treatment it out with ultrasonic waves. That didn't work to break it up and to move it along. And so then they had to be proactive, which was invasive. So my ureter has had a doctor go up it and like through and in from the bladder to the kidney. And I mean, all of those personal parts, that's already happened. On the front side. Now they want me to unpucker and to be able to go and let them explore on the backside. And he's asking me, he's saying to me, hey, what do you have against it? And I'm like, everything. I have everything against that. And so he's so then he appeals to me on my sense of mortality. Well, Steve, these tests matter because it saves lives. Well, yeah, I mean, me not drinking 2 pots of coffee a week saves my life too. I did that, but that's not me drinking some glow-in-the-dark radioactive stuff or after having to empty out and then get all cleaned up and on the inside. And so it's like when you get the house ready for guests. You have to clean the house. Then my internal house has to all get cleaned up so somebody can knock on the door and walk in and me say, hello, welcome. Come on in. My colon has been prepped and cleaned all for you. Would you like a cup of coffee?
Oh, man. I have never pictured it that way before. My internals are now putting on a house party. I'm gonna have multiple people inside. I've got to make sure.
And they're looking for the bad stuff.
Right.
They're not.
Polyps and
Yeah, I mean, they're looking for all the bad stuff. So then, 3 polyps are waving hello, and who knows? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know what's there.
I don't know either.
Oh.
And so his appeal was, there's things that we can't actually look at to know what problems are occurring. And so if you did this, people start talking likelihoods to me, and I'm like, there's nothing about this I like. So anyway.
This gets us to men's health, right?
Oh, yeah.
I am not very good with checking in on my health. I rarely see a doctor, and I actually have an appointment next week.
Yeah.
To do a whole physical, like blood work and all that other fun stuff that, and I probably haven't done a physical in probably at least 3 years. So that's that, but I don't always pay attention to it, which is always like, the only person in my life that usually wants me to pay attention to it is my wife.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not saying, I think most of the time, I don't really want to pay attention to it until something happens.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a good opportunity to talk about men's health, and that, it is good to check in, right? That's how you save lives. You get checkups, early catching is always the goal in most things. Like, you catch things early, and then we can be able to work on that. It's going to be easier if we catch it early.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I think the question then for guys is, how in tune with your internal body are you? And really, no shame. No saying, hey, you're an idiot if you're not paying attention to how you feel. Usually it's the people outside of us who are like, hey, what's wrong? You something's got to be wrong because you're not acting right.
Right.
And not right in the proverbial sense of right from wrong, but you're not acting like. So if you're a dick normally, and then you're even worse.
Right.
You're not your normal self of just being a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where it takes you back to, you need people around you to sometimes point it out.
Well, that's true too.
If you don't have a good gauge on what your body's trying to tell you, right? And I usually don't. Like, if I have a pain, I'm like, it's fine. It'll go away.
Yeah. I had a dentist tell me once that I have a high pain tolerance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, well, obviously, I'm here for another root canal, But, yeah. And actually, it turned out, it's been a dumb month in regards to, that's how, I'm kind of whiny about it. I'm like, it's April, it's appointment month. But now I have an alliteration.
Uh-huh.
April, appointments. All of my annual appointments are in April.
Huh.
So most people are going to be feeling bad about the doing their taxes and getting their taxes done by the right timeline, which, based on the pandemic, yeah, and good luck.
I finished mine, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Nice.
I got it done early, at least based on the federal. Federal may move back to May 15th. Yeah. So I just decided, it was just recently too. I think I got it done on April 15th. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, 30 days ahead of time, but right exactly. On time.
Right.
Yeah. Which, again, is probably your mind and your body is so used to doing it by the 15th that you couldn't let yourself go by the time that, for all of these years.
Right.
So you got to pay attention. I knew 5-6 years ago, I felt so poorly, I knew I had to get into the doctor. Mm-hmm. That puts me at somewhere, I think I was 47, 48. So it's been 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. I knew because when I was walking upstairs, I was short of breath, weighed 200 and, I don't know, 37 pounds, and just felt like crap.
Right.
And probably the way I was living wasn't helping me any, but so went to the doctor. But I had been having headaches for a couple months, and I was chasing these headaches with just drinking more coffee and Excedrin migraine, which is basically caffeine tablets, and doing all this. And I got to the doctor, and I'm like, but my blood pressure was through the roof. And so, and my dad had high blood pressure, like hypertension early in life, like when he was 19, 18 or 19 or whatever. Like they wouldn't let him join the military because of his hypertension. And so I, like, my whole life, when I go to the doctor, I would be waiting for them to tell me I had high blood pressure.
Right.
And it finally happened. I got high blood pressure. And so then doc put me on started me out. We kind of worked through that. Again, this is why in men's health, you should go to the doctor, because when you're going to the doctor and they catch stuff early, it's less of a inconvenience than when they stop your life full because they have to take care of everything that's torn apart.
Right.
So anyway, then it got to a place where he couldn't even control it. And he just looked at me and he's like, yeah, you've got to lose weight. And I went back to work, and there was a director's meeting. And I walked in the door and I said, hey, everybody, I'm going to apologize in advance on how ugly I'm going to get. Just know it's nothing to do with you. This isn't a spiritual matter. It's not a spiritual condition. I'm just telling you, I'm going to be a grouch for 2 weeks, and then everything will be okay.
Right.
And so if you consider me a grouch already, I'm going to get grouchier. Mm-hmm. And so everybody laughed, and 2 weeks later, Karen walks into my office and she goes, you're right. You're more grouchy than you usually are. And but I just know how I am with sugar withdrawal. And, you drop carbs, and
Right.
went on the Mediterranean diet and lost 60 pounds. And now I'm grouchy because I gained 20 of it back. Mm-hmm. My doctor yesterday is like, hey, by the way, you're not doing too bad. Your weight's okay. And in my head, I'm like, my other doctor from Iowa, I'm like, no, he'd be having, like, he'd just be going off on me. Be like, dude, you're obese. That doctor in Iowa called me obese until I dropped below 190. And he's like, well, we can take this off. You're not obese anymore. This is why people who have heart attacks, they're not having heart attacks because their hearts are like really in bad shape. They're having heart attacks because they're angry at their doctor for calling them fat. I mean, this is the deal. It really doesn't have to do with the condition of the heart. It's that doctors can be real a-holes. And then they're asking us to do these like stupid things like eat salad and greens and get off of the red meat and don't do this. What do you mean I can't drink half and half on my cereal? WTF. Come on.
Were you drinking half and half on your cereal?
I do.
Really? I mean, I don't even eat cereal, so because I don't like milk.
See, that makes it easy for you.
Right.
You should do the Mediterranean diet if you need to.
Right.
I've
never heard half and half on cereal.
Half and half's not great on everything. You take blueberries, put them in the freezer, pour half and half on it. It's like this little blueberry honeycomb, 3 tablespoons of sugar. Why? Because 2 is just not enough. And then you've got this wonderful fruit, ice creamy, sugary numminess. Oh, I've got all kinds of ways to be able to live in a horrible dietary
existence.
Right.
So maybe more on the bad dietary stuff later, especially if we're talking about health.
I'm on a rant here. So anyway,
But maybe I'll have to join you in the alliteration of appointment Aprils, because I never get in that routine, which is probably also the reason why it becomes out of sight, out of mind for me. I don't, haven't gone back. I feel like the same thing. Like, you're gonna tell me the same thing, and I'm gonna pay you what, $500 for you to be able to tell me, hey, you should probably do this, this, and this. Okay, you told me that, 6 years ago when I came.
well,
So yeah, so I'm gonna, I know that it's important. I know that it's good, but I also,
wait, you're still in a young bracket though.
yeah, I mean, technically, yeah, I guess.
How old are you?
42.
Yeah, right. So I mean, like,
I'm pre-colonoscopy range.
oh yeah, you don't have to pucker tight for nothing.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, but you're moving there. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I would say enjoy the next decade of your life, and then there'll be a real pain in your ass. Literally.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll get there. All right. What do you think? Oh, we got
about what?
Yeah, I don't. Were you going to try to go down this route of health still, or are we going to switch topics?
Well, I think the part that we really didn't get to is for any male or female listening to this podcast is the question is, are you paying attention to your body?
Right.
My body gave me warning signs that sent me to the doctor the first time. I knew I needed to see this doctor. It'd been 18 months, hadn't had any blood work done, and obviously once you get on medications, blood work matters because the medications you're on affect your blood. And they can tell how your liver's doing, how your kidneys are doing, how, all of those things. He even told me he's not going to put the glove on because he can read the
Blood work charts.
the blood work charts to know like how my prostate is. And, me personally, I'm really cool that somebody doesn't have to poke their finger up my butt to be able to check my prostate. And so
It's good news.
I mean,
Science is advancing.
I don't make a practice of running around naked through all of my hometown. I mean, like I'm a modest boy. I prefer to wear my clothes and not have people
I'm with you on that.
invade my space. Yeah,
For sure. That's where I'm at too.
well, good. So, I mean, I just want to make that point.
Yeah. So I would say
we can go down any other.
pain is an indicator light, right? So pain in the body says there's an indication. Like just like your car has indicator lights, like oil change or check your engine.
Oh, I never told you this though. You know what the
Pain is
doctor?
there.
Yeah. So I told the doctor about some, tightness in my chest. So he starts pushing against me and doing all this. I get to start Pilates, Mr. But he's like, yeah, just go on YouTube and take a Pilates class on YouTube. So I have noticed that like my range of stretchiness, much like the stretchy pants.
Right. And you did talk about posture as you
Yes, which I was completely aware of because of the podcast. Because we sit here all hunched over like this, and we're like, yeah, let me talk to you, and like, yeah, but so, yeah.
I remember when I saw a fitness trainer, and this would have been when I was in Iowa. That was like one of the first things he's like, learn to do this all. I'm like, oh, but it just doesn't feel natural to me to be able to try to pull my, like.
But I feel
here.
better when I do it.
Right.
Yeah, I feel better, and that he even said that like the bump in my blood pressure, could be because I'm concaved and I'm not getting the air, and it's affecting my heart. He's like, Yeah. So anyway, got to work on posture for heart health. I love this doctor's approach. He's like, hey, we're not doing it old school. You know, I'm not putting the rubber glove on, and we're not doing an EKG. He's like, that stuff doesn't. I'm going to look at the numbers. I can really appreciate a doctor who's going to say, I'm catching up with these times.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And it was an annual. I went to pay for the annual check, and she's like, no, it's an annual check. This is covered.
We got it.
I'm like,
well, your insurance got it.
Right. So true. So true.
So true.
So health.
I'm
going to go off 1 degree. You got your shots.
I did.
You're vaccinated.
I am fully vaccinated.
Yeah, so I'm not going to catch COVID from you.
Yeah.
Ish.
And I'm 100% guaranteed of no hospitalization or death from COVID. I think that's a good thing.
That's what they said?
Yeah, it's 100%. That I won't, like, so if I do, so some people still would catch COVID, but it's 100% that it won't lead to hospitalization or death. So they still might end up having boosters, but I gotta say, the second shot really kicked my ass. Like I mean, so I had it on Monday. Monday night, my head was like pounding. Tuesday, I was like, it'll be fine. I'll wake up and this will be fine because it's just just a headache. Wake up Tuesday, like I'm cloudy. I mean, it was. I started, full body aches, like
Whoa.
Zapped of energy. I'm like, nothing is feeling good. And, yeah. And so it took like all Tuesday, even I went back to sleep. Still, I mean, I still got on, did my stuff normally that I have to get done on Tuesday, but it was a stretch. It was like, I have to motivate myself because I had no energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then by Wednesday, it was just my arm ached and my lymph node underneath my arm was swollen.
Yeah.
And they said, apparently that's good. That means your lymph nodes are working.
Huh.
So they're in overdrive. So they're trying to be able to work on it. So yeah. So even though I went through that, I was like, I'm still grateful though.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that science has gotten to us to a place where I can still be able to get the vaccine. I joked with the nurse who was administering it, and I said, so after the first shot, I didn't have many side effects. I said my arm hurt a little bit. And I said, so I'm assuming nothing, was injected, there that was very dangerous. I said, so is it the second shot that I get my chip implanted? I said, because I'm really hoping for a possible superpower that's going to be a part of my existence now. And
yeah.
And I'm like, do I get to pick the superpower prior to you putting that needle in me? So she was just laughing. We were having a good time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But here's the thing, like, there's no chip. Guess what? We're already followed. We're already tracked.
Yeah.
Your phone, my watch tracks me. I got all kinds of stuff that tracks me already.
You do Alexa too, don't you? Or Siri? Or no, hold it. Which?
Well, there's an Alexa downstairs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, yep. And Alexa, it was, speaking of technology then, I remember this was like last year, but I was, it was a Monday, day off. I was watching some TV. All of a sudden, Alexa's just like, hey, I'm wondering if you would like to have a conversation with me so I can continue to learn. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, what? Like, it was just out. Like, I didn't say, Alexa. Like, usually that's the, trigger for it to
turn on.
Turn on?
Well, to turn on and engage. Or to engage with you. Because it's always on.
Yeah, it's always on.
Yeah. So it's picking up. It's listening.
Yeah. But that was the first time that like Alexa engaged
out
in a conversation with me, and I didn't begin the engagement.
Wow, artificial intelligence.
Yeah. So I was just like, all right, I'm like, yeah, what do you want to talk about? And so she starts asking me questions, and I'm like, this is weird. Like,
Wow.
yeah. Well, what books are you reading? I'm like, so I'm listing off some books and talking to her about the books. Like,
Don't you feel
no more
weird
Yeah.
about that?
Oh yeah, it was weird. Because I was the only one who was home. I'm like, is this really happening? Like, am I imagining this? Am I hallucinating?
You know, our conversation about angels.
Yeah,
Maybe you were visited by an electronic angel.
could be
Whoa.
supernatural. The supernatural Alexa.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, technology.
Well, I knew you got your shots.
Right.
Excited about that.
Yeah.
Doctor told me that I'm, and I love the feedback from some of our listeners who are older than me.
Yeah.
So if you're day past 54 and a half, this would include you.
Mm-hmm.
You can put your comments in the comment section about how you feel about colonoscopies. Maybe you want to share your own experience. We'd love to hear that. But so I can get the vaccine for shingles.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor said that he would highly recommend it. Now, this is the same doctor that is highly recommending a colonoscopy. So I'm not really, I'm just not there yet. And I wish I could be. And somebody's like, well, what do you have against doctors? And I'm like, nothing. As long as I don't have to talk to them or see them. I mean, like, it's the part of, the only part I have against them is when I'm forced to go to them. So what I'm really saying is I'm mad at my creator for making my body deteriorate instead of growing stronger and stronger and living longer and longer. And so I'm probably, if we get behind this animosity towards doctors, it really has to do with me in an internal fight against deity about why the hell does life have to get short? This is self-diagnosis.
Sure.
All right. And so, but I was talking to Amy, and her dad had internal shingles. And it really, she told me last night, she's like, dude, you should run and get it. Not like actually run. I mean, she would encourage me to
Don't run
run.
with needles.
But I don't want to really run. And so, so I'm contemplating that. The state of Illinois, I think across the country, opened up so that everybody could get the shots now for COVID. And so somebody was asking me, well, hey, are you going to get the shot? Well, my daughter's getting married in 3 weeks. I really am not looking for complications between now and that wedding. Mm-hmm. Probably right after the wedding. I'll take another week where I'm not going to accomplish the things I want to accomplish, and I'll get my shot, be sick, do that whole thing, and curl up on the couch and let Gypsy nurse me back to health.
Which I would say, I mean, like, my first shot was fine. I mean, I had a little bit of a sore arm.
And then it's a month later.
No, it was 2 weeks.
Oh, 2 weeks.
Yeah, so 2 weeks in between, which I think might have been 3. I don't know, but somewhere in there. 2 to 3 weeks afterwards, you get your second one, and the second one is the one that hit me. So
yeah. Which I've heard, I've heard feedback that a lot of people are seeing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I've also had some feedback. Some people didn't have any effects on the second shot either. So it's possible that your body might be different than mine. And you may never have any effects.
We have some similarities.
We do.
In our bodies and body type and things like that. But then there's some things where I could be different.
You could.
Yeah.
So you never know.
I don't know.
Yeah, so the shingles, is that the one that's like you have to do that annually?
No.
That there is one that's like an extension.
The Shingles Vaccine is a one-time done deal. It's kind of like the polio vaccine. And this is CDC recommends that healthy adults 50 years and older get 2 doses of the shingles vaccine called Shingrix. 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 That sounds like a great word for shenanigans. Recombinant zoster vaccine separated by 2 to 6 months to prevent shingles and the complications from the disease. Your doctor or pharmacist. All right. So how long does the Shingrix vaccine? This says protection for up to 4 years. But Professor Cunningham believes it'll last much longer. The second dose is important to ensure long-term protection.
Yeah.
It's more than 90% effective. Shingles is not caused by COVID-19 vaccines. Here's the science. Shingles, known as herpes zoster. Gosh, you don't want to go run around the street saying you got herpes when you got shingles.
Yeah, I listened to a guy, and I can't even remember which podcast it was, but he was talking about, I think it was Smartless, and he was on saying that he can, based on your genetic code, that you can figure out the right diet based on your genetic code that actually is going to extend your life. Almost like, I mean, he's looking at himself. He's looking at 150 to 175.
What's that?
This guy, I mean, I'm trying to find more information on him. But he says, through these like 23andMe or Ancestry, that you can also do a genetic, like a genetic test. So you can look at your whole body's genetic code.
Okay.
And then based on that genetic code, that you can figure out the right either, vitamin supplements or dietary pieces that you can actually learn how to extend your life much, much further than the current life expectancy. Now, I don't know for sure what kind of doctor he is.
Right.
Chances are probably not a real medical one. I don't know. I have to look. I don't want to speak poorly of the guy, but it always makes me wonder when, like, all right, what are you selling? Like,
yeah,
you got a supplement then? You got a this, you got a that, like, so what I got to pay you like a couple of $1,000s to work with you to figure out how to extend my genetic code?
Well, I mean, if you're going to pay a couple $1,000s to work with somebody, I'll work with you.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, I won't make your life longer, but I'll make your life more enjoyable as you live. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Same for anybody out there in Hulu land. So I'm doing more research on shingles here.
Okay.
And it is called herpes zoster is the scientific name. So anyone who's had chickenpox may develop shingles. It isn't known what reactivates the virus. It's basically a reactivation of the chickenpox within you. Yeah. Treatments include pain relief and antiviral medications, and chickenpox vaccine in childhood or a shingles vaccine as an adult can minimize the risk of developing shingles. Now, see, here's a great question. I don't know the answer to. I remember having the chickenpox.
Yeah.
I don't know if I got vaccinated for it or not. Actually, we were at not my Aunt Donna's place. It was the Bergman boys. But I remember coming down with chickenpox.
I've had chickenpox too. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Heather's had shingles before twice, I think. Heather's had shingles. So.
Well, I would think if she's had it twice, I would race to get the vaccine. I don't know, but
maybe run.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, isn't it interesting? Just mortality, and like, dude says you can live for 170 years or whatever, but what's the quality of life on that? I mean, I've been to the dentist, and we're talking about my teeth wearing out, and so, like, you may be able to live that long, but will everything of you be able to support you? Well, it'd have to if you're still living.
Right.
I lose a bunch of shit right now. Can you imagine me at 127?
Yeah. I wonder how much you really want to extend that further. I mean,
I think it would just really piss off the people like where you have your investments of like I'm thinking because I got seasoned at Glory Day for the retirement thing. And so there's a pension. Well, they figure out in the pension based on your age and stuff, like they're planning on you living to a certain age.
right.
And so then, but if you live beyond that, they still have to pay it, but they weren't planning to pay it. I found it very interesting. In the pension, they are not planning on people living much further than 12 years after you retire.
Yeah, and I remember like long-term care insurance.
Yeah.
And how, I mean, it's really an investment because if you're looking at trying to be able to extend, like, because that gets it really expensive towards the end of life,
Yeah.
like insurance and, all of that. So when you're looking at that and saying, so if we're actually extending life out and you're using long-term care and it's insured, I mean, you've been paying for 20 years and now you're going to be using it till wherever. I mean, that's going to take a hit on the insurance companies then too.
Well, I think what you'll find is now, because of what they're learning about the boomers that are retiring, now you can't get unlimited long term. Like they write the limits in. So much per month for so many months up to, and so like I think at some point you get kicked on the street. Technically, no. And everybody does the dance with, well, now I'm here, and then the government kicking in and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What else you got for me, Phil?
Yeah, so I think that we were when talking about the live show, there were a lot of people who do like our conversations on the fringe.
Yeah.
So you got anything new in the fringe territory?
Well, I'm going to take a unusual approach. I feel like my research is heading down a familiar path. Currently watching Hangar 1 on Netflix. I'm about got through that. There are some similar ties. Nikola Tesla, that dude, I think he actually was visited by aliens.
Tesla was.
There's nothing that really has, he's not intertwined. But why I think is because I think some of the things that he was working through, I think that they were, it was shared information. And especially when you watch the Tesla Files, like in the last 2 episodes, they start talking about this, he died in a hotel in New York. But when you take a look at the structure and with what was going on, like the very things that he was doing out in Colorado and stuff like that about energy, I think he was put up by the government there to be able to do these black ops development. And he wanted to communicate with aliens, and people are like, and there's a bunch of stuff missing. And some of the things that we're talking about, alien technology, are some of the things that were happening back in that time period of development in multiple countries. And so, but where in Hangar 1, they're talking about the hot spots. And the hot spots for UFOs have to deal with where there is concentration of energy emittance. And then we started getting into this stuff about the energy of the earth. Now, this is a Tesla thing all over the place. Tesla believed that we should be given energy free, and it could be transmitted via the earth through these large coil inventions that he had. And but we go back to a familiar conversation in regards to that when your major investor in the United States has invested in copper mines to be able to sell copper wire, that's why Edison was in the good with what was going on. And, but Tesla's mind and everything dude was freaking brilliant. And so maybe he's an alien. And so, and really, when people are like, Coble, how do you think about, I still go back to the Bible in Genesis where it talked about the daughters of man, and then
the Nephilim.
Yeah. And these Nephilim are not human.
Right.
And their offspring, they procreated.
Right.
So whether it's angels procreating, or whether it's aliens procreating, I don't know. I was listening to NPR and they were talking about DNA, and then they were talking about what would happen if you combined the DNA of humans and gorillas, or apes or monkeys.
Yeah.
I heard this thing on NPR 2 days later on my phone in the news. They're actually doing that right now for organ development, for organ transplants for humans. This seems really weird.
Well, I think you look back at Nazi Germany, who was doing tests to be able to create super soldiers based on gorillas and taking the DNA of gorillas and trying to do this whole thing. So like they were already trying to figure out some of this, then too. So
Umbrella Academy.
Boom.
Yeah, another government conspiracy cover up. And
right.
Y'all are thinking that this is fiction, right? Or fiction, nonfiction.
Yeah, so fiction is made up, nonfiction is real.
Right. So y'all think it's fiction. But I think what people are doing is that they're making media, and they're making media about the true things and giggling that we think that it's so absurd that it could never happen. Which again, in Hangar 1 is a major appeal. They're like, Bob Lazar.
Heather loves Bob Lazar.
Bob Lazar comes out in 1983 and says, "Hey, I've been like hauled away, and I've been working on this thing, and the government has this, and blah 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 blah, and all of this stuff going on." And people are like, "No, that's just way out there. We can't even. No, that's not happening." And then, like in 2002, the government comes out and says, "Oh, by the way, we have this technology, and we're doing." And so, if they would have listened to Bob, so I'm thinking the real thing you got to do is you got to listen for the crazy people, and you have to listen. And like Clem said, just believe.
Sometimes you got to believe people's stories.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was thinking, going back to where you were talking about the energy from the earth, like that takes me back to the Skinwalker Ranch, where that place in Utah creates so much energy that it starts to mess with things. Now, Fordyce pointed out to us, he's like, all right, so my only question from after watching Skinwalker Ranch was, like they were saying, equipment would shut down and they would have phones drained, drones would fly overhead, be disrupted, you couldn't get anything from them. He said, except like all of their equipment to shoot the documentary wasn't affected. So what's the deal? Like, how does that happen? Like, I don't know for sure, but like, because there was a lot of it was within that that whole documentary piece was, it was pretty convincing. There were things that were happening that were unexplained. You even look at, I don't know if you recently, I mean, this was just like I think 2 weeks ago, with the pyramid shaped things that were flying, and the Pentagon came out and confirmed, yep, those are UFOs. And there wasn't a lot of people who were talking about it. It was a news story. I think there were people who probably shared it and talked about it, but like I thought there would be more people. I mean, like the Pentagon confirmed. Usually the Pentagon doesn't confirm anything that relates to the unexplained and especially UFOs. They're just like, oh, but what did they confirm? Did they confirm that it's the government? I mean, like, that's our technology, we're messing with stuff, or it was like, we don't know what it is, and we know that that's real footage, and I don't know. I mean, so there's all kinds of stuff right now that we're dealing with.
This takes me to episode, I think it's episode 5 or something like that, on Hangar 1.
Yeah.
And it's about politics. And Ronald Reagan and Nancy were on their way to a party, and they saw a UFO, but they disappeared for a half hour. They were a half hour late, but they couldn't put it together. And I mean, like, there's people that were at that party, but it was actually Ronald Reagan's second interaction with UFO. Now you go back to Ronald Reagan in the development of the Star Wars, he launched into this, and they actually have his speech and quotes of, there are aliens among us and we have to defend ourselves in this. And to your point, here's the conclusion. They're going to start pointing and distracting, but there are many people who feel like we have alien technology and it's up in space, and so we're zipping around in the stars and doing all this stuff, and the crafts and the different things like that. This has been ongoing reversed technology into manufacturing, and it's humans driving the UFOs now, as far as what's going on.
Yeah. And that's what I wonder with the confirmation of it. And that's where the only headlines I would see was Pentagon confirms that we're talking about a UFO. But are they confirming that, yes, it is unidentified, or are they confirming that, oh, yeah, well, that's us, but we can't really tell you that it's us?
Right.
I think there's, as I talked about I think maybe it was the Fringe episode, I talked about why our technology isn't more advanced. And I wonder if it actually is more advanced and they're just not willing to be able to tell everybody that it's advanced.
Well, and there's a timeline, again, in Hangar 1, they point out that it was actually alien technology that allowed for our technology to advance as quickly as possible, and it happened with the transistor. Up until the point of the transistor, how they were magnifying power and signal were vacuum tubes, and so like the old tube amps,
right?
Like what I got, for my guitar and stuff like that. And we talk about the warmness of the sound and stuff, but then you move into solid state, and they're talking about like what would be in a supercomputer room and how big it was and everything, that when transistors were introduced, then, I mean, in a phone, a smartphone, like there's hundreds of thousands of them. Mm-hmm. So I took some time, had the pleasure, is what I'll call it.
Yeah.
To, during our break, to go out to North Carolina. Mm-hmm. My first trip ever to the Outer Banks. And there's parts in that area that it reminds me of an East Coast California. Like, I mean, there are some really cool, chill people.
Right.
Yeah.
There are.
Instead of the uptight people with the big houses. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean if you have a big house that I'm calling you uptight. All right? I'm just using that as a generalized term in contrast to the flip-flop wearing.
Mm-hmm. Chill and relaxed.
Not a sponsor. Tortugas Lie. Great little off-the-path restaurant that we had lunch at. So anyway, in that trip, I was actually contemplating the allure or the pull of our conversations mm-hmm. on Fringe, and it brings me joy to think about what all the stuff that I don't know about. And so if people are like, man, why are you guys talking about that? And blah, 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 and stuff like that. And I'm like, I use a lot of dumb stuff to waste time. I mean, like, I've seen every episode of Bering Sea Gold. Like, every episode. People are like, what? That is a commitment. I'm like, 13 seasons. I mean, and I've seen all of those in the last 8 months. I mean, like, yeah, it's I've got white noise on and mm-hmm. I'm doing a project around the house or, whatever. I'm like, I would like to visit Nome, Alaska. Mm-hmm. I'd like to go down to the local bar and meet Chris Kelly. I would love to have I mentioned it before. I'd love to have Chris Kelly on our show.
Right.
But I think that with the world being covered by so much water, and I really enjoy oceans and large bodies of water. Mm-hmm. Like there's a whole different part of me being drawn into this idea of Hollow Earth. But I mean, I read Isaac Asimov's I, Robot as a 13-year-old. Mm. Like, I mean, I've always liked science fiction, mm-hmm. and then if people would just like kind of grab onto that idea of, well, it's fiction, Coble, it's fiction. Just get a hold of it. It's fiction. Yeah, and so why I'm just drawn into the idea of being able to explore an alternate reality, or that things always as they seem. I think a lot of times humans try to portray life not as it seems.
Mm-hmm. All the time.
It's a major cover-up.
Oh yeah.
I think we're all guilty mm-hmm. of the major cover-up.
Oh yeah.
And so why in the world would we just like be like, well, there's no way that this could be a cover-up? Mm-hmm. Sure there is.
Yeah. What's not a cover-up?
I love the idea of just exploring that part. It's all being covered up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I feel like what we do quite a bit is we want to cover up the flaws, whether that's cosmetic surgery. We want to cover up the bad portions of, like what we don't want public. What do we do? Or like, how can we conceal this? You know? I mean, so those are all the, the social media stuff, whether, you're putting out there the good. You don't really want to put out all of the ugly too.
Yeah.
So we're going to conceal that. here's the other thing. We also conceal pain. We want to do what we can not to feel it.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do? Cover it up. What do we need? Well, there's the prescribed medication that we're going to use to cover it up, and then there's the
Yeah.
there's all the other chemicals that we use to cover up hurt. So that's
And
cover up is big.
I think if we chase this down, there's some people who are caught with, I would say, like, there's a framework that forms what is okay for their cover to be. So it could depend on your religious background. It could be that you're like, oh, those things, like, it's against my code to be able to use that. Like I've mentioned in the past, I grew up Baptist, of a certain sect of Baptists in the North. And, we always used to say, I don't smoke, I don't chew, I don't go with girls who do, or I don't drink, I don't chew, I don't go with girls who do, and stuff like that. I mean, and there was a checklist of, if you're going to be a good member of this church, there was a covenant. And for you to become a member, you had to read through the covenant and be able to ascribe to it. So we've talked about this on the podcast before. And, but with that, so then like there become these markers, the markers of, oh, well, you're drinking a lot, and so that's a worse thing.
Yeah.
And yet when we would go to a potluck, my dad would eat 3 plates of food. My dad carried 265 pounds on a frame, very similar to mine. And like right now I'm at like 205. And if you can imagine, like
another
60 pounds
plus,
on this, I mean, he was big. Right. He was a barrel of a man, but man, that guy could pound food. And gluttony, I mean, like if we're going to chase this down a religious vein, gluttony is just as much a sin as drunkenness. All right. So, but on the flip side, I'm just cool with, hey, figure out what you're doing to cover. Just figure it out. Right. At least acknowledge it. Don't go through life in such a way where you're like going to live in denial. But I think within humanity, and this is what I love, in the Jewish account of creation, there is this part in the story of the interaction between Adam and Eve, right, that there was a tree. And hey, everybody, nobody was there. Like right. Nobody who's here today, or even there when the words were written down, nobody was there. This is a story that was handed down verbally in the Israelites' circles until it actually got to pen and paper. All right, just for the record. Right. But so there's this tree, and then there was a decision to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And there in that account, the serpent came to woman, and then I think the King James Version says beguiled her. But anyway.
And you can probably interpret that in numerous ways.
Yeah, and so so then Adam comes along, and he didn't want to be lonely, so he followed her, and he ate of the tree. And the whole point of the story is that God said, "Don't do that," and then within humanity. But the interesting part that I'm getting to is when they were awakened, they saw that they were naked, and then they hid themselves.
Right.
And so that's the whole point. And me personally, I think that it's in that the rabbis would come and say, let us look around and see about humanity. What does this show us that we see within ourselves. And there's where I land. In that
concealment.
We are coverers. So now everybody who's bent because they're like, Coble, you didn't say you believed in creation. No, I chose my words to poke you in the ear. You know, I chose my words because I wanted you to get to the place of that in this account that you could be able to take this, and instead of getting on a soapbox to frickin', get bent over about whether this is the true account of creation or not the true account of creation, the point is, in the story, we can learn about ourselves and to be able to see and what can we glean about ourselves and about others that is even shown in the story. And the whole point of that is that we are coverers.
Yeah. And I think about then this term gatekeepers, because who then becomes the gatekeeper? And the gatekeeper doesn't want to make sure that everything is known. They want to let people know what needs to be known from their perspective.
Right.
Right. And so what do you want to do? You want to conceal the stuff that, that isn't going to look good. Right. I mean, so taking this out of religious context into the governmental context, the government becomes a gatekeeper of information.
Right.
And the government has been collecting information for a long time. We were just talking about this. Right there, the Patriot Act it was a huge movement that was passed during this, after 9/11. They were like, we need all the information. So, it was the Congress who said, let's spy on our own people. And that's what the Patriot Act is like we're officially, condoning the government to allow to be able to spy on all its citizens. And so when you're thinking about that, so they have a ton of information, and they're going to say, we want to be the gatekeeper to tell you what you need to know. And what we need to know and what we should know or could know is then in this realm of why we get so, people in general get so intrigued about the unknown, about the unexplainable, is because somebody knows something and we're getting a glimpse behind that, what was allowed, and we get behind this glimpse and people are like, hey, like, here's stuff that we didn't know, and now we know at least a sliver. And I think that's why it's so intriguing.
Yeah.
And it would be the same then if you're looking at people who have concealed for a long time, and then you get to know, like, oh, I've seen the sliver, and this is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating to know the thing that you didn't know before. I mean, I guess that even gets back to our whole premise on why we have interviews on the show, because we're trying to allow people to see something or know something that they didn't know before.
Yeah. It's a platform to listen, to get deeper, and be able to it's in discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Totally in discovery. I like it. So that's why on the Fringe, we really do. We just have a good time. And for probably as we were like working through our first 10 episodes, I had been in some really good fruit land as far as being able to get information, and the Nikola Tesla files like helped me just really kind of dive back into some of that stuff. You know what I would love? I would love for some of our listeners to be able to, like if you've got some science fiction that you really enjoy to read. I finished Broken Horses and passed that book on to you.
Right.
And I was saying to Amy, I'm like, man, I think this is the first book I finished in 10 years. And then she listed off the last 3 books that I've read.
She called you out.
She did. She's like, hey, what about the Johnny Cash biography? I'm like, oh, yeah, I read that. She goes, what about Jeff Tweedy's biography? Oh, yeah, I read that. Are we seeing a theme here? I really like to read the biographies of, watching Tom Petty's biographical work on DVD. That's great work, too. But really, really enjoyed that. But again, it's the thing that draws me into, like, some of the local artists in Des Moines that I loved to hear sing are the people who were the most vulnerable in sharing. The art is just telling a story and putting it to melody.
Right.
And so that's where I had told my mom, I'm like, and I think it's the reason why I haven't written a song in a long time, is I've been waiting for my muse of me to get connected to be a deeper revealer. I can make up shit all the time. I can make up a story that isn't true.
Right.
But what's in me to come out is I want to be able to share the vulnerable stuff. And so and when I was traveling, I'd get to a place where my eyes would get tired. Or I had enough chapters in me for the moment, and then I just carried around my little notebook, and then I just took time, and that's the thing, is I just have to take time and just listen and write stuff down. So it was really cool. Wrote a couple songs, and Brandy Carlisle, you have inspired me, and just as much as John and I were talking about the Jeff Tweedy Write One Song book and stuff. So yeah, it's cool, but there's the part of discovery, actually after watching Hangar One, there's a place in Missouri that we were talking about me putting out my antenna to meet the aliens. Well, I know where I've actually driven through the one town where, like, they see these glowing globies and stuff consistently. It's a hot spot. They call multiple sightings of UFOs a flap.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
California,
Yeah.
Missouri, New York, and actually Chicago at O'Hare, there was a UFO that came down, and but now they're talking about how that professional pilots, it's all cover up. It's like the airlines don't want people talking about UFOs because it's going to affect all the people who are
Gonna fly.
Yeah, and people who are interested in UFOs apparently people think they have a screw loose.
Screw loose.
Yeah.
Right.
Little,
And that's the easier way to cover it up, right?
well, I mean,
Because if you're dismissing the accounts, then you've got to be able to say there's something wrong with the storyteller, then, not with us.
yeah, like pilots who had been pilots for like 30 years have lost their jobs because they said, no, this is what I saw. Yeah, they're like, yeah, we don't want to see that.
Right.
We don't want to hear it.
There's a lot more to discover out there. That's what I know. Too many cover-ups. It's time to unearth it.
Well, those guys on the Curse of Oak Island, they're working really hard to do that. Yeah. And this goes back to the predecessors of the Freemasons.
Right.
Which actually, that's another thing that I'd really like to explore about
Secret
Chicago.
societies?
Oh, yeah. I love that stuff. The Knights Templar? Oh, man. Throw that down. In Chicago, because of where Chicago is, there's a bunch of Freemason and Knights Templar stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's a wealth of riches. Not only the spoils that are in the pockets of the people who live here, but also lost riches all over the place.
Yeah. And there's plenty. If you're talking about, concealment, think about, during Prohibition and all the speakeasies that were throughout Chicago.
Oh yeah.
I mean, with what's his name, the gangster Capone.
Yeah.
I mean, he had home base was Chicago.
Yeah.
So that dude didn't stop drinking.
Oh, and I mean, even from his point of wanting to drink, the other reality was getting rich on other people who wanted to
That
drink.
too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So there's all kinds of secret stuff in Chicago we could explore.
Oh yeah. And what about the secrets covered by the Lake Michigan? I mean, like one of the things that the guys on the Curse of Oak Island bring up is that they're bringing up that Canadian whiskey was being shipped from Canada into Chicago because of the waterways. You know, all kinds of stuff going on, and they'd ship the 100 proof and then they'd cut it down and whether it was 15 or 20 or 30% or whatever. I mean, so then, I mean, so the amount of alcohol in boxes at the bottom of the lake and just other stuff. I mean, lots of stories of treasures from Michigan and Illinois at the bottom of Lake Michigan. Yeah.
So it's like a sneak preview on things that we could explore.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll find some Chicago historians maybe that will talk about the secret things.
Oh, how fun would that be?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a couple on the social medias.
All right.
So maybe I'll just have to spend a little bit of time now reaching out to a few and see if we can have them on to talk about the secret things, the undiscoverable. It's a good opportunity. So, all right. I think that's probably good for an episode. There's lots to explore. It gives us a sneak preview on things that we could do later on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a good opportunity. Good conversation today.
Yeah, and we've got at least 3 people that we've mentioned about doing interviews, and just know that right now what it really is boiling down to is it's about timing and how things work out. And so we're gonna figure that out and be able to get some more interviews going. But just want to let everybody know that we really appreciate you spending time with us today. And we're hoping that you had as an enjoyable time as we had with everything that's going on. So with that, I will say, see you later.
Take care, everybody.